Alrighty, so today, really quick, I want to talk a little bit about some things that we can do with our surrealism photos. So I got some photos here that I'm going to use. One of the things that I want you to do today is determine what photo you would like to use as your main photograph that you're either going to cut things out of or put your little people into to try to make it look surreal, right? Like if we go to, if we go over to Martin D. Pascal's work, right, he actually goes in and uses one photograph of himself, this main photograph of him laying down, and then cuts things out of that and puts his little people into that situation, right? Like we see here with him pulling his heart out. He also adds different images in. He added this photograph of a heart. He added a photograph of a ladder. He added these ropes. So thinking about what's the main photograph that you're going to put yourself into to create this surreal environment. So I have this one here set up. Now, couple things that I want you to do today is select that main photograph and then start getting those photos of you doing things, laying things down, holding things up, crawling. Take those photographs, select them, select yourself out of that background and start putting them in preliminarily, meaning in a spot where you think it might go. Now, if we look at this photograph here, there's a lot of things that need to be done with it. The colors are bad. I have this yellow in the background. It looks foggy. It doesn't look great. I want to adjust the contrast. I want to adjust the color. I want to change it up a bit. So before you do anything, get your main photograph in and start doing some of those things to it. So I'm going to go to my image. I'm going to go to my adjustments. And I'm going to start first with brightness contrast. So I'm then going to, make this a little bit brighter. I'm going to increase some of that contrast a little bit. Get it to where it looks like it's got good contrast, good coloring. Then I'm going to go to image adjustments. I'm going to go to hue and saturation. And this is going to be kind of the coloring of it. So obviously I don't want to look like an Oompa Loompa, but I do want to try to get some of the coloring right and all that kind of stuff. And try to get it to where it looks back to somewhat normal. You could also try to go to image adjustments. You could go to auto tone, which should auto colorize the photograph. You could go to auto contrast, which should give you pretty decent contrast and so forth. So I'm getting this to where I kind of like it. I like the exposure of it. I like the colors of it. So I like it where it's at. I'm going to save this as my Surrealism main photo. And I'm going to maintain this as a Photoshop because I want to add my little people into this. So I'm going to click Save. So now I'm going to get one of my photos of my postures. So let's see what I have here. Let's see if I can move this. So I'm going to go to my Finder. Maybe I can find it on my desktop here. Let me see where I have some of these. So there we go. Perfect. So I have this one here of me holding that up. So I'm going to go ahead and I also have this one. I'm going to drag this into Photoshop. And now obviously I have so many things in the background here, right? I have this light, I have this door. I just want myself out of this background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my quick selection tool and I'm going to show you guys how to do a really good selection. So I'm going to go fourth tool down, quick selection. I'm going to go to select and mask. And remember, select and mask allows us to get a prime clean selection. So you'll first see this first toggle. This says transparency. So what this means is the background behind what my selection is. So I'm going to leave it kind of at 25%. And you can zoom in. So I'm going to zoom in on this. Yours would probably be Control plus and Control minus. And then once I go in, I can start brushing over my body and my fingers and selecting some of these things. So I'm clicking in certain spots on my hands, and I'm going to go in and touch some of this stuff up, and I'll show you where. Now I'm going to go around. I'm going to do my legs. Oop. I'm going to hit Command Z because I got too much there. So it's having a hard time down here in my legs because the coloring's all the same in the ground. So there we go. So obviously I have too much, right? If I reduce this transparency, you see I still have the floor. I'm missing some of my face. So I'm going to Command plus, and I'm going to go in and make sure I'm getting everything that I need to get here. Getting my hands. Now I can go to my minus and I can start reducing some of these areas. Oop. And you can reduce the size, which will help reduce the detection of it, meaning how much it grabs. Oop. So that looks all right. Get it as close as I can. You can play around with these dials to see how much that kind of affects your selection. I don't want to feather it too much. I'm going to go to contrast. That's going to give me a sharper edge. If I go to radius, that's going to give me a little bit more of a sharper edge. So I'm going to try to get some of this back in here. Oop, I'm still on minus. So I'm going to take that plus. There we go. That's looking a lot better now. I got some of my face in there. So now let's see if I can get rid of some of this stuff down by my legs. So I'm going to go to the minus. Get rid of some of that. See if I can get rid of some of this stuff. There we go. Around my legs. See, the color next to my leg and the floor is the same. So that's why it's having a hard time. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cancel out of this. And I'm going to adjust my tone and my contrast. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments. I'm going to go to Brightness, Contrast. I'm going to increase the brightness a little bit. I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit. That's going to give me a little bit more of a difference between my legs and the floor. Brightness might be a little high. I'll reduce that just a hair. I'm going to go to Image. I'm going to auto tone this. Auto color. That should be pretty good. So now let's see what I can do here. Let's see if I can get a better selection. So I'll go back to Select and Mask. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to brush over and see what I can get out of my face. Still getting a little bit of the floor, but I think I can get rid of some of that. Get my shoes. Good, I got my legs. Let's get my hand. Let's see what that looks. So I'm going to reduce the transparency all the way. So that's what my selection looks like right now. So I want to adjust some of this. So I'm going to brush in over my hand here. Get some of my fingers in. I got to get my forehead in here. Just like so. I want to get rid of this little thing under my ear. So I'll go to minus. Now reduce some of that. So it's looking pretty good. Now we got to get some of this stuff out of the floor here. Add some back to my knees. So it's this dance between adding and subtracting and getting things back in and taking things back out. So that's looking pretty good if you ask me. I got a pretty good selection here. I got my hands, which are going to be holding something up. I got my legs, which you'll see my shoes. And now you can play around with how much this smooths. The contrast, which means how hard that edge is. So if you look, that looks a lot better. So much better, so much cleaner, so much more crisp, all that good stuff. And now what I can do is I'm going to go down to output settings. I'll decontaminate these colors. That's going to make sure that there's no color around the edge of my selection. Make sure there's no color coming in from the other side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and put this into a new layer. So it says output to. You'll just go to output to new layer, click OK, and now I have my selection here. Let me see if I can pull up my layers menu. There we go. So now I have this layer. So now what I can do is I can then, I'm going to rename this. So if you double click on the letters, I'm going to rename this little person 1, or I can title it little person lifting. So maybe put the action that you're doing so that you know which it is when you try to find it. And then if I double click on this and or right click on this and go to duplicate layer, remember we can send this to a new destination. So if you see there's the word document. I'm going to send this over to my Surrealism main photo. Click OK. And there my person is. So now I can go to Show Transform Controls up at the top here, and I can resize this. And start thinking about where I want to put some of these. Now obviously we're going to go in and we're going to adjust kind of the contrast. We're going to adjust the imaging of all of these. We're going to adjust the coloring so that it matches, so that it looks all the same. Okay, and that's why it was important to take all of our pictures at the same time. That way we don't have different colors, we don't have different, different things that we're dealing with, making it a challenge. So then you can do some different things. You can start cutting things out and kind of playing around with some different things. So go ahead, get your main photo put in and adjusted with color and contrast, and then start selecting and getting your little people selected and put in just temporarily. Okay? I hope you have fun with this. The selections are a challenge, but I'll show you some ways to clean them up later on when we get them all into the image and get them all working. So that's your main objectives. Get that main photo in today and get those little people selected and put into the main photo and getting ready to start moving things around. All right? Hopefully you guys have a good time. Let me know if you have questions.